you are watching Open Stage Project's second annual union panel. I know we have a lot of students here today, in addition to some of our donors and other union members who are here to support their future colleagues. This conversation is just introductory, where we'll discuss the ins and outs of union membership, how to join, and personal experiences of our selected panelists who you see on the screen today. We're going to do 20 minutes of panel. And that will lead into about a 15-minute Q&A, where, as we mentioned, you will be able to ask your own questions through the Zoom chat feature. And now, let me introduce our panelists. First, I have Meghan Abel. Meghan is Local 1 Props.
Hello.
Can you give us a wave? Perfect. Jessica Jahn. Yes, Jessica Jahn, so sorry. She's Local 829. I have Jenny Kane, Local 52. Kim Shaw, she's a member of ATPAM, the company manager. And Tamilla Woodard, she's a member of SDC, the stage directors and choreographers. Woodard, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Tamilla Woodard, stage directors and choreographers society. Great, everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start today by asking the big overarching question. What is a union? I'm going to shoot that over to Kim.
Hello, everyone. So a union, specifically a labor union, is a group or collection of people who have a common interest, and that body essentially represents this group for fair pay, benefits, and collective working conditions to better the whole entire lives of the people in the group. That's
amazing. That was fantastic. Yeah, so a union is a large group, and a lot of you looking to work on Broadway are going to need to be members of a specific union to work in your desired capacities. So I want to go down the line and ask everyone how you joined your union, what requirements there were, and what was one of the biggest barriers you crossed in order to join. So I want to start with Meghan.
Hi. All right. So I did an apprenticeship to become a Local 1 member. The apprenticeship is a 2-year program. One of the best things about being a Local 1 apprentice is that you are not required to have any particular theatrical knowledge coming in. The idea is that you are taught everything on the job. The apprenticeship happens at either a theater or a shop, which is within the jurisdiction of Local 1. And I think one of the biggest barriers to, or hurdles to being an apprentice is the test. The test is a little difficult, I will say. You can study for it, however, and if you need more information, I can, make sure to give it to you later. But it's also the fastest way to get into Local 1 is to be an apprentice and do the 2-year apprenticeship program.
That's great. Thank you, Meghan. Next, I'm going to go to Jessica. Jessica Jahn, do you mind explaining the union you're in, the requirements, how you joined, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm in the United Scenic Artists 829, which incorporates designers as well as other artists in the theatrical and film industry. And for us, or at least for me as a costume designer, I needed to pass a portfolio review and then have a certain number of hours essentially working on a union production. But the most important part of my getting into the union was the portfolio review, which was a review of my work that I had done so far as the designer in front of a panelist of other union members who had already been in the union for years and sort of provided a framework for letting people in.
That's great. Thank you. Next up, I'm gonna go to Jenny.
Hi, I just want to say one thing that Jessica, Meghan, and I are all in the same union. We're all part of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. I work in the film business side of it. They're on the theatrical side, but we all work together, and this is across the country and in Canada. So we're a really big international I'm in what's called a motion picture studio mechanics local. So we do TV shows, films, commercials, music videos, documentaries, but we're TV and films as opposed to Broadway, local one, or dance or any of those things. We're the ones you see in the street with the cables and the lights. That's local 52. And I'm an electrician, and I got into the local I'm in, local 52, which covers props and grips and sound people and video people and carpenters, shopcraft, medics, grips, electricians. And I got in also by taking a test, deciding which department I wanted to go into, which was electric and lighting department. And there was a practical and a written test. So as Meghan said, it is difficult, but it is definitely possible to get in.
That's great. Next, I'm going to go to Tamilla.
Hi, I'm Tamilla, and I'm the union that I'm a part of is stage directors and choreographers for stage directors and choreographers who work in the theater. And I've been a part of that union, I think now, I can't remember. Actually, I was going to very quickly look it up and I couldn't find that, as a full member, and started as an associate member. And my main job inside of stage directors and choreographers is as a stage director.
Great, thank you. And lastly, let's go to Kim.
Hi, I am in ATPAM, which stands for the Association of Theatrical Press Agents and Managers, which also is one of the IATSE international unions as well. So in my union, there are company managers, which is what I do, house managers, which they perform a similar job to what I do, but for the theater owners as opposed to the show, and press agents, which, you know, we have kind of across all of the entertainment field. So at PAM, that's what we are. And there are several different ways to get into the union, and I actually find it it's quite a feat to do it. You can, and once you're a member, and you can kind of cross and do the other jobs. But you can either have a theater owner who will put you in their apprentice program, and there's a limit to the number that can be in the apprentice program, and it is a 2-year program, I think it is. And once you do that, you get to the end of it and you take a test, and then you become a full member. But meanwhile, while you're an associate, you get a lot of benefits that you wouldn't have otherwise. And then you can also be offered a show on a full contract, and you can also join the union that way, which is what a lot of people do, and then also go through the training classes so that you can then become a full member. The tricky part about my job and what I do is that there are a lot of shows on Broadway, off Broadway, and elsewhere that will hire people to do this job that aren't actually union. So you can spend a lot of time working and doing the work and doing Broadway shows without any protections and without any benefits until somebody gives you the opportunity and gives you a contract. So I think that positioning yourself to be offered a contract can be the biggest hurdle. Some people, they get that right out of college. Some people have to work off Broadway and do national tours for 10 or 15 years before they get that opportunity.
That's great. So next, I want to talk about the benefits of union membership and what the biggest benefit you have found in working in unions. So let's first go to Jessica.
For me, I think the biggest benefit over the course of the, I don't know how many years I've been in the union, has actually been health insurance and health and pension and welfare benefits. And that's partially because the union as a large organization can sort of both organize that for you and then also help you get the companies to put money basically into your pension, health, and welfare so that you're able to then have health insurance through the union. So for me, that's something that was really important and that I find really helpful.
Sure. Jenny, can I go to you next?
Yes, absolutely. The healthcare, health insurance, pension, welfare, but also safety. Working on sets, you work under a union contract. You're guaranteed turnaround time from when you start work to when you stop work. You're guaranteed meals at a certain time. You're guaranteed safety. So if you're working in an unsafe location, you can call up the union representatives and they will come down and shut that show down if it's an unsafe location. These are huge benefits for being a union member.
That's great. Meghan.
I think one of the biggest benefits to union membership is knowing that you have certain protections beyond even, you know, just like benefits, but you are protected if your employer decides to fire you without cause. If you are asked to do something unsafe, you know, you have an entire organization, very powerful one, backing you up, making sure that the employer does not take advantage of the employee because, you know, you are small and you are just one person. It's a huge organization behind you, backing you up, keeping you safe, keeping your job safe. And there's a lot less guesswork, you know, and what I mean by that is you don't have to wonder what's expected of you. Everything is very like laid out. This is exactly what the employee does and this is what the employer does. And just having those guidelines, those outlines, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of, hey, what am I supposed to be doing at work? It's very cut and dry, and I really appreciate that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tamilla?
I agree with everybody. It's the health and pension. It's the protection that the contracts guarantee you, and being able to have a place of arbitration when things go very, very wrong, and to have a place to call and ask for advice, and knowing that people have your best interest as an artist, as a working artist, in mind. It's also a place where you will, the union will sometimes flag folks who are not participating, like who are not being fair in terms of creating a workplace and how they treat their artists. And that's also really, really useful, is that you sort of like, if people aren't really, I think, operating in the best interest of their employees, the union will flag that. And the last thing that I'll say that wasn't said is for SDC, it is the professionalization of yourself as an artist. And so being a part of the union, when you go from non-union to associate, from associate to full-fledged member, you're also making a commitment as an artist that you are a professional, and that you yourself will operate as a professional and work with people who also deem themselves professional. That's the company that you work for, the artists that you work with, and the situations in which you work.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Kim, anything to add?
I think everyone's really covered it. I think the thing is that for most people, especially those of us who work in commercial theater and who work in film and television, we are mostly gig workers. So once the show closes or you're wrapped or, you know, whatever happens, that's it. And then you're on to the next thing. And if you're lucky enough, you have them lined up back to back to back, or sometimes there's a break. But having a union means that you will not have to change your health insurance every time you change employers. It means that you know what your benefits contributions are going to be every time you change employers, what is going to be expected of you, all of those things, standardizing what the work rules and environments are across all the different gigs, because every show is like a small business and people run them the way that they want to. So that just normalizes what the work is that you're going to be doing. I think that that's an important thing. And I also think that the union really, I spent a lot of time, I've worked in regional theater, I have worked off Broadway, I've done a lot of work without the benefit of a union contract, and shows run out of money all the time. And in my position, I'm one of the first positions they try to get out of paying. We'll put you on the next show, or whatever reason. I have been stiffed out of my last paycheck on more shows than I can count. And now that I'm a member of the union, that just cannot happen. There are other protections, there are bonds and things like that, so that if the show does in fact run out of money, there is a way for me to get my final paycheck. Because in my position, I will have worked several weeks after the show has actually finished performances. So it's devastating to then do that and then not get paid for it.
Sure, it adds a level of consistency to a very volatile industry. That's great. Perfect. So I want to talk about female representation in unions, specifically what kind of representation in terms of like percentages or stuff like that you've all seen in your specific union over the years, and if it's changed throughout your time as a member. And I want to start with Tamilla.
Yeah, my union's like female strong, I have to say. SDC is like representing, and you know, from Lee Silverman and Rachel Chapkin and God, I can go down the list, but there are a lot of women who are in leadership positions at the union, in leadership positions and committees, and really are driving forward how the union operates, and also extending the umbrella of the union in a way that's really, really critical, that I think is also necessary. And how, yeah, so women are very, very, very strong in SDC.
Jessica, what about you?
You know, I don't know a lot about the figures. I do know just from my personal experience that, you know, in the sort of like 15 plus years that I've, oh gosh, it's been more than that I've been involved, that it has sort of steadily grown. And that's just USA 829. I don't know about IATSE as a whole. I'm sure that varies sort of slightly as, you know, each of the sort of like unions within the umbrella sort of change and grow as the years go by.
Interesting. Yeah. Meghan?
I believe right now local 1 membership is about 6% female. But I find that there are more women coming up and working on Broadway jobs that haven't gotten their local 1 cards yet. They're working towards local 1 membership. So I would say it seems like the percentage is higher based on, you know, the work calls and the load in, load outs, the number of women that I see on the calls, but we're still definitely not enough. But it is changing, and I think as more women are going to school and graduating with degrees in technical theater, and also as technology improves and stagecraft is less a physical job, it's still physical, but now brute strength is not the most important asset a stagehand can have. I think that it is becoming more and more accessible to women, and I see more and more young women coming up all the time, starting with off-Broadway projects, and it's really exciting to see it.
Yeah, I love that. Kim, I know company management tends to be a little bit more administrative. Do you see any differences based on that? Or
I mean, yeah, I feel like ATPAM is heavily female. I mean, I don't know what the exact figures are. It is at least 50-50, if not more. And there are a lot of press agents that tend to be women. Press agents were some of the first people to have diverse, like Black people in particular, to do a lot of the jobs. So they have, because they're not on stage, right? So there's been diversity, both gender and race-wise, in our union for a very long time. And I see that, you know, managers in particular, house managers and company managers tend to be female these days. Men seem to want other jobs. So there are a lot of us.
Interesting. And Jenny, I saved you for last just so you could speak to film and TV specifically. And I don't know if numbers are a little bit different in your industry, or, you know, what you've noticed over the years.
Definitely more women than when I started. I joined Local 52 30 years ago, and there were very few women electricians. There were, maybe one carpenter. There was, a couple of grips, a lot of prop or more prop women in the prop department, some in the sound. Now, I mean, we're still under I think we're about 10%, maybe a bit more. Some departments, the property department has a lot more women. So it depends, but I would love to encourage more women to look into, careers in carpentry, in the shop craft, building sets, in the electric department. There's, we work as a team. So strength, as Meghan said, is not the only thing that's important. Grip department, sound department, there are women we've all proved ourselves in all these jobs. So, so I think it's definitely better than it used to be, but we still need more women.
That's great. So next I want to talk about the connections you've made in your industry. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you have a specific personal answer to this. But did you have a mentor that really shaped your build into the industry, whether, it's someone that you work specifically with or somebody that you kind of happen upon throughout a job and, never saw again, or you don't need to use specific names, but I am interested in how you found camaraderie in your industry and how you've kind of grown.
I'll say a couple of things that and I think this is useful to know that I've had mentors at every single stage of my career, and that's also really important, I think, to think about, that you never grow out of mentoriness.
Yeah.
Because you're always, if you're lucky, you're always entering a new room in some way, and that it's useful to always have the hand, somebody who's willing to take your hand or your finger or open the door for you. And so getting out of school, I had one mentor that helped launch me into just working as a director. And then just in the last year, I've had another mentor who's a younger human than I am, but has enormous amounts of experience in a place that I also want to have, at some point, enormous amounts of experience.
Yeah.
And so you allow yourself to be led and guided and ushered through doors by people who have also been led and guided and ushered by other doors, and they recognize the value of that. So mentorships at every single stage of your career, from out of undergraduate to graduate, into off-Broadway, and then finally into Broadway, and then it will also be into film and TV as it is, now.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to chime in? Yes, Meghan.
I've had several mentors, but my first and most important was my father, who was also, he's retired now, but he was also a Broadway prop man. And I think it's so important to find a mentor that you not only respect and respects you and your where you are in your journey and your career path, but also someone who is respected by their coworkers. I think it's really important to be like, how do other people react to the person that I'm taking advice from? If my father is a great example, because he always manages to inspire people to do their very best work without ever raising his voice. I don't know, I'm still learning how he does it, but he is a constant inspiration to me. He encourages everyone. Everyone is his friend, and yet he is so efficient and really inspires the people who work with him and for him to be their very best selves. So it's important to find someone you trust and someone whose behavior you can emulate just as a human being.
That's great. So I think it is time for our Q&A. I want to make sure we get to a couple of questions from our panelist audience. The first question I have, I believe, is going to go toward Jessica specifically, based on the nature of it. But it is, how would you put together a portfolio for something such as costume design to get into the union?
So I think this applies not just to costume designers, but also for scenic designers, for instance. And what I did, and this will be different for everybody, but is, as I was sort of realizing that I wanted to go into this industry, I started slowly designing small projects that I, would sketch out and sort of have an actual physical portfolio, which nowadays would also be like a website of your work. So it's basically a visual representation of the work that you do. And because I didn't go to grad school, I didn't have the opportunity to get that work in school. So I basically worked my way through and designed as I was assisting other designers, and used that work to create a visual portfolio. And so then when I knew that I needed to join the union to sort of continue the work that I was doing at the time in film and television, that was the visual portfolio that I used to present to the union panelists to get into the union.
Sure. That's great. Thank you so much. This one, I'm not sure who specifically to direct it to, so I'm going to let you all raise your hands again. The next question is, do you have any advice for those with little to no theater experience or film and TV or industry experience, eager to get started somewhere but not sure where?
I'll do that one. I think that you need to 90% of all of these jobs, I don't care what industry you work in, is about showing up. So you just need to show up. If you put yourself in a position to meet someone, whether that is through a panel discussion or at a mixer or something like that, it can be anywhere. Just starting and being able to start asking questions to figure out what it is that you might be interested in or what you want to do, because there's going to be a lot of figuring out what you don't want to do. Like, I feel like that is a humongous part of this. You can say, I love this industry, but this job in particular is not for me. So that it's just getting yourself into the first room so that you can get yourself into the next room. And there's no telling where your career is going to take you or where you're going to be. Some people know what it is as soon as they go to their first show. I'm doing this one specific thing. It takes some of us a little bit longer, but being willing to show up when other people don't, being willing to ask smart questions, and being willing to return even if you've been rejected or knocked down a little bit, that is literally how we all get to where we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, Jenny.
Well, in film and TV, a lot of people start out as production assistants, which is a great way to sort of learn what all the jobs are on a film set. And it's because you may be interested in the wardrobe department, or you may be interested in the electric department, but you'll see how everyone works. Another good place to look, there's a lot of information online, and I would look up I'd look up International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, the IA, and Local 52. You can see what union workers do as well. And another thing, the mayor's office has a lot of good resources to find out if there's student films going on. Working on a student film for a week or so can be a great experience. You really learn a lot about what's going on or what jobs are. So that's some advice.
Thank you. I also want to note, Open Stage Project's website has a full page about job FAQs if you want to click to that after this panel is over. We've got a lot of extra links that will take you to these specific websites that Jenny had just mentioned, where you can learn and dig a little bit deeper. So our next question, and I think we have time for maybe one or two more. What does being in a union do for workers in a time like this? Do you want to raise your hand again? Oh, Tamilla.
I'll say very quickly, just for instance, just a couple of days ago, the union contacted me to say that they recognize that several of my contracts have been canceled, and that they will pay out half of those fees for those contracts as a way to sustain me as an artist. And and this is how I can apply. They also are waiving my union dues for this moment. And so that's the thing that a union does, is it essentially, how do you take care of your membership? And in this case, how do you sustain people whose work has, been canceled or postponed? It's you've got to find a way to pay them. And if they can't actually do their job, how can you as a union help come out of pocket for that? So those are two very particular.
That's great. Does anyone else? I saw Jenny raise your hand.
Yeah, I mean, the IA is definitely doing a lot right now to take care of its members in terms of if you can't get out of the house, finding someone else who can do shopping for you. There are a lot of resources that every local is putting out and the international is putting out. So yeah, the union's definitely looking out for its membership at this time, which is wonderful.
Yeah, Megan.
And our union is, they've also negotiated on our behalf for the shows, for those of us working on shows that were unfortunately cut short. They were working on negotiating with those employers on how to get us paid for at least some of the time. I think my show that I was working on, unfortunately, was already set to close. But people who were stagehands on regular shows got paid 2 weeks severance pay. And then if this continues long enough, the union will try to negotiate how we can all still have health insurance, even though none of us are earning money. Usually that's how we earn our health insurance benefits, by earning money under union contracts. So they are constantly fighting for us and for their membership to make sure that we are taken care of. They do a lot for us.
Yes, and I do want to mention, I've seen a couple of questions come up asking about what union this is. The large overarching union that we've been discussing is IATSE, IATSE. And because I know less about unions than maybe some of these students do, does somebody want to remind us exactly what that stands for?
Sure.
Yeah.
The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees.
Yes, thank you so much.
Over 100, it's 120, it was 125 last summer, so 125 years old. So this is the earliest, this is a big union and it's been around for a long time.
That's amazing. Perfect. I do want to mention again, you can find that again all on our website. And I believe the link is in the chat here on Zoom. I also want to mention, if you have not signed in yet, we would love to know who was here. We have only maybe like 3 or 4 minutes left in our panels, and we do want to make sure we know who attended. So if you have any other questions, we'll be able to consistently keep in touch with you, give you more information that you might have needed. So please click that Google form link. If you want to fill it out after, fine, but just make sure you have found the link and clicked it out ahead of time. You can also email us at info@openstageproject.org if you do have any unanswered questions, and we can help try and make connections and continue the conversation there online. I want to ask, well, first of all, I want to thank every single one of our panelists here today, and I want to ask if they have anything else to add in the meantime. We have maybe 2 minutes left, so raise your hand if you have one thing you'd like to say before we go. Maybe the biggest advice you'd find for students starting out today. Maybe someone in their 20s, like what you wish you knew. Oh, come on. Yes, Megan.
Okay, I wish that I had known that I didn't have to change who I was to fit in with all of my male coworkers. I thought that when I first started out, that to be a good stagehand, I had to be masculine, and that is not true. There is nothing about the job that requires someone to be a masculine person. I can be as feminine as I like and still do a really good job, and I wish I had known that when I first started.
That's great. And Jenny?
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. And also that you're going to find mentors and wonderful people to work with in any category you're in. And people will teach you what you need to learn. So you don't have to feel you need to know something before you can start out. And you'll find out what's interesting, where you're sort of, where you want to go. And once you're on a film set, for instance, you'll realize pretty quickly which department you want to be in.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Tamilla, last word?
I want to echo, like double, triple underline what Jenny said, that, and I think it's especially important for women, female identified theater folks to know, you do not have to know what you're doing. Like everything is about learning. And I just like, it is like critical that you like get that in your head. Come and learn, and you will get good at it faster than you think. You do not have to know how to do the thing before you get the job or ask for the opportunity.
That's great. Well, we do have 1 minute left, so I just want to say thank you everyone so much. Act 2 applications will be open on our website starting on May 1st. So please check out www.openstageproject.org if you would like to apply. There's full information there. It's for juniors and seniors. And like we said, we put our website in our chat. Please follow us on social media, OpenStage NYC. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you need more information on Act 2, please email info@openstageproject.org. Thank you all so much for joining us. Panelists, thank you so much for talking to us today. You have been incredibly helpful to all of our students. And students, please feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone.